all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio. And now, your host for today's program, Dale Throneberry.
And good afternoon, folks. Welcome to Veterans Radio. My name is Dale Throneberry, a CW2 type, a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, 1969 with the 195th Assault Helicopter Company. Today is going to be all about helicopters, so all you rotor heads out there, start paying attention and see what's going on. We're going to be talking with our Medal of Honor, newest Medal of Honor recipient, Colonel Charles Kettles, and another helicopter pilot, Colonel Daniel Long. We're going to be talking about their experiences on one nice day in 1967. When we take, after we take our break, we'll be coming back to them. I just wanted to thank everybody for supporting the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 310, down at the Ypsilanti Heritage Festival. I was down there a little bit this afternoon, a little warm, holy mackerel. But they were selling raffle tickets for, I'm hoping, my new grill and for some other things. And it's a great fundraiser, and I think a great time was had by all, and I want to thank all the members that came out and supported that. I thought it was a good turnout, even with the weather from yesterday and so on. We had a lot of people there, and a lot of people were very nice stopping by our booth and supporting our raffle. I think that was very nice of everybody. It's always amazing, folks, when we see the American civilian population and they just came up and they just wanted to give our, shake our hands and thank us for our service and so on. And we want people to do that too, which reminds me, fly your flag. I should do this. My wife says I have to do this. No, I don't have to do it. But we've been driving around the local area, and maybe you drive around your local area, and we've noticed that there aren't a lot of people that are flying their flags, and we would really like to encourage people to fly their American flag. It doesn't have to be on 4th of July or Veterans Day or Flag Day or anything like that. And so what we have been doing is when we find somebody with a flag flying on their house, we've been sending them a little postcard that says, "Thank you for flying your flag." And we're hoping that their neighbors will say, "Hey, what's that postcard for?" And they'll say, "Hey, somebody told me, congratulated me and thanked me for flying their flag." In fact, I had a student of mine sent me an email, and he said, "Thanks for the postcard." And I didn't know where he lived. And he said, "Yeah, I got a postcard from you that said thanking me for flying my flag." So we encourage you to do that. If you'd like to find out more about Fly Your Flag Project, you can send me an email at dale@veteransradio.net. That's dale@veteransradio.net, and we'd be loved to help you out if we can and tell you how we're going about driving around our neighborhoods and letting our people know. Speaking of events, lots of them going on. So let me get to my list here. First of all is coming up, and I mentioned this the other day, the Louisville Slugger Warriors are coming to Michigan, and the American House, which is a senior living community group of facilities, is presenting the American House All-Star Game featuring the Louisville Slugger Warriors. And all these Louisville Slugger Warriors are disabled American veterans. Not most of them. Some of them are missing hands and arms and legs and feet and all kinds of different things, but they are a competitive softball team and they're doing a great job. And they are coming to St. Jimmy John's Field in Utica, Michigan on Saturday, September 10th at 1 p.m. This is a fundraiser to raise money for the Louisville Slugger Warriors and also for other veterans organizations around the state of Michigan. So I encourage you to do this. Again, it is Saturday, September 10th, 1 p.m. at Jimmy John's Field on Auburn Road in Utica, Michigan. For more information, you can go to their website. It's www.uspbl.com. uspbl.com, or you can call the box office at the Jimmy John's Field at 248-759-5278. And lots of great information. It looks like it'll be a fun time for all, and it's a great way to raise money and a great way for you to do that to help out America's veterans. The other thing, finally, is the 7th annual Veterans Summit by the Canton Community Foundation and Legal Help for Veterans coming up on September 20th in Westland, Michigan. And this is where you, all your veterans and your families, you can learn all about health care, business, disability benefits at this free event for you. That's September 20th in Westland, Michigan. So I want you to go to their website and that's the CantonFoundation.org. CantonFoundation.org, or give them a call at 734-495-1200. Mark it on your calendar. So you got two things to do. You got September 10th, you're going to go watch a great softball game, and then on the 20th, you're going to go to the Canton Community Foundation's 7th Annual Veterans Summit and learn all about all the things that everybody's trying to do to help veterans out. So I encourage you to do that. Finally, and now joining me on the line, to gather all my notes in here. There's no air conditioning in our studio today, folks, so if you kind of hear this melting sound, it's going to be one of us probably turning into a pool. I'm not sure what that'll happen. But joining me on the line right now from the Bob Evans Company and also from the Gary Sinise Foundation, and I can't find your last name, Mike. Mike Towsley, there it is. It is Mike Towsley from Bob Evans. Mike, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Great to be with you, Dale.
So tell me, what is this thing that you have set up with the Gary Sinise Foundation?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying that Bob Evans Farms has had a strong, rich tradition of supporting the military. Bob Evans, our founder, when he came out of World War II, had a great sense of really wanting to give back and to recognize our veterans as well as our entire military and their family. So we've had a history of that through the years. In our latest endeavor with Gary Sinise and the Gary Sinise Foundation, is we really looked at, say, okay, how can we continue this tradition and what's the best way to do it? And really, through our research, we felt that Gary and his foundation, with the efforts they've had on with supporting our military and our veterans and their families, and actually providing meals for them, really was a nice alignment for Bob Evans, considering we're in the food business.
That's true. And how are you going about providing meals for veterans?
What we have done, Dale, is we donated $200,000 to the Gary Sinise Foundation, and for that would be providing over 6,000 meals to military veterans, families, and our active military as well, at different bases and locations all across the country.
Wow, that's kind of neat. But I also see that, and so this is not something where we're going into a Bob Evans restaurant. This is going to be on bases around the country.
Yeah, the events where we're actually either feeding our troops and their families, or veterans and their families, is actually on locations pretty much have been on military bases. Okay,
but I noticed that you. I'm looking at the website here for bobevans.com/ourfarmsalutes.
Right.
And I am looking at this barn that has been repainted.
That's correct. Those of you listening that might be familiar with the Bob Evans Farm in Rio Grande, Ohio, there's a barn there, and typically it's painted white with the Bob Evans logo on the side of the barn. Well, due to our commitment to this program, and really to create a conversation with people that are visiting our farm, and to use it with promotional material to really draw attention to it, we painted our barn purple camo. And on the back side of that, there's a mural of our past military, all the way back to the Revolution, where they're actually looking to the future, and then some of our more current military branches looking backwards, saluting their predecessors. The reason for the color purple, though, is that the color purple represents all branches of the military. It doesn't pick out just one or the other, but it is the universal color for our entire U.S. military force.
I think this is really neat. And could you tell our audience again where this barn is?
This barn is in Rio Grande, Ohio, which is about 2 hours south of Columbus, Ohio, almost to the West Virginia line, around Gallipolis, Ohio.
Okay. Oh, I know where that is. All right. Now that's terrific. Is there any way, I notice here that people can go to this website and donate funds to help out, what you are doing with the Gary Sinise Foundation?
Absolutely. There is a link there that would take you right there and allow them to participate.
I think this is a great thing that you are doing, and as a veteran, we greatly appreciate what Bob Evans is doing with Gary Sinise, of course. Gary Sinise is known to every veteran, I think, in America for all of the things that he's involved with. And
Absolutely.
So I'll let you do this. Tell our audience where they can go to find out more information.
Well, you can go to a website, ourfarmsalutes.com. It may, let me look here. It may be .org. It's ourfarmsalute.com or the Gary Sinise Foundation.org.
Okay.
It's ourfarmsalute.com or the Gary Sinise Foundation.org to make donations to the Gary Sinise Foundation. And like I said, Gary really became passionate about this whole movement after 9/11, and
right.
He has just done some fabulous work with our military, and really, like I said, through our research, we felt this was a great alignment with Bob Evans, our culture of giving, and our support of our military troops.
Well, I strongly recommend everybody for a good breakfast go to Bob Evans, and while you're there, you can probably take out your cell phone and click,
That's right.
and click on Our Farm Salutes and make a donation to the Gary Sinise Foundation. How's that for a combo?
Well, I think that's fabulous.
Well, thank you very much, Mike Towsley from Bob Evans. We look forward to talking to you again. Let us know how this works out.
Great. We appreciate it, Dale, and we appreciate getting time to speak to you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks. So that's a nice thing that's going on out there. I think pretty cool. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got Medal of Honor recipient Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kettles, called Chuck by some people, called Charlie by other people. I'll just call him Sir. And joining him on our program is Colonel Donald. I think I said Daniel before. Donald Long, who happened to be there that day. We'll talk about that day in just a moment. You're listening to Veterans Radio.
I don't know if there's anybody here today who doesn't thrill to the sound of those blades. That familiar whop, whop, whop is the soundtrack of our war, the lullaby of our younger days. To someone who spent his time in Nam with the grunts, I've got to tell you that noise was always a great comfort. It meant someone was coming to help. Someone was coming to get our wounded. Someone was coming to bring us water and ammo. Someone was coming to take our dead brothers home. And eventually, someone was coming to give us a ride out of hell. Even today, when I hear it, I stop, catch my breath, and think back to those days. I love you guys as only an infantryman can. No matter how bad things were, if we called, you came. Down through the green tracers and other visible signs of a real bad day, off to a real bad start. To us, you seemed beyond brave and fearless, that you would come to us in the middle of battle in those flimsy, thin-skinned crates, and in the storm of fire, you would sit up there behind that thin plexiglass, seeming so patient and so calm and so vulnerable, waiting for the offloading and the onloading. We thought you were God's own lunatics, and we loved you. Still do. We're the fortunate ones. We survived when so many better men gave up their precious lives for us. We owe them a sacred debt to live each day to its fullest. What they're saying when you listen hard enough is this: we're at peace, and so should you be. And so should you be.
A sound never to be forgotten for anybody that was in Vietnam or anybody who's heard about Vietnam. That was Joe Galloway, who was there in 1965, actually, and is part of the book. We were young once, and we were soldiers once and young. I knew I'd get it right. Joining me in the studio right now is a special pilot, a special God's own lunatic, and that is Colonel Charles Kettles, and I'm just going to call him Sir or Colonel. Welcome back to Veterans Radio.
Well, thank you.
And joining me on the line is another Colonel, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know how to address all these people. I just call everybody sir now, is Colonel Donald Long. And Colonel, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to be with us. And Colonel Long is down in North Carolina, and Colonel Kettles is here in the studio. And I should say, if anybody does want to give us a call, you can do that by dialing 734-822-1600, 734-822-1600. How often are you going to get a chance to talk to a Medal of Honor recipient? Not often. Speaking of the Medal of Honor here, and I'm just looking at the Congressional Medal of Honor Society's website, and it says that the Medal of Honor is the highest award for valor in action against an enemy force which can be bestowed upon an individual serving in the armed services of the United States, generally presented to its recipient by the President of the United States of America in the name of Congress. And there have been a little over 3,400 Medal of Honor recipients or medals that have been distributed. And we are very fortunate today to have Colonel Kettles with us. It's kind of an interesting story, I think, and some of our audience has probably heard some of it before because we've had the privilege of having you on the program. But tell me, when exactly did you join the military first time?
Well, I was drafted in October of '51 for the Korean War. I'd been attending what was then Michigan State Normal College, and dropped out in the fall, and was for the fall, and was going to start again in January. I was working 2 full-time jobs to accumulate enough funds that I could go back more like a gentleman, and maybe my academic record would be a little bit more favorable.
That's stellar, right?
Yes, so it was less than sterling by a long shot, as the dean of men would attest to.
I think some of us have had that experience before also.
I see. Well, yeah, I don't think I'm the Lone Ranger in that respect. But
so you went into the service in 1951, did you say?
Correct.
And did you go to Korea?
Well, eventually. But first, of course, went to basic training in Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky. From there, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for Officer Candidate School, and went to Fort Ord briefly, California, and then went to flight school and completed that in April of '54.
When you went to flight school, what was it that you learned to fly in 1954?
The L-19, which was later designated 01. And it's a tandem Cessna product.
Okay, I'm going to say that's a regular airplane. This is not a helicopter.
Yeah.
Not
yes.
yet.
Yeah, the wings stay rigid, hopefully. And by the time I got to Korea, the war had been over by some 5 months, I believe. Mm-hmm. And we stayed briefly until that fall, about October, November, and then the entire artillery group moved from there to Camp Drake, Japan, which is just outside of Tokyo. And they did their maneuvers out at the base of Camp Fuji. And so...
All right, so there was kind of a break in the action here, too. So, I mean, you were in the military for how many years before you got out and then went back in again?
Well, I completed my obligation in the fall of '56, and nothing was happening, so I elected to get out, and did so. And then my brother and I opened a Ford dealership in DeWitt, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
And then... Of course, Vietnam came along, and so I volunteered to come back on active duty in '63 for Vietnam.
Okay, and then that's when you went to Rotary Flight School?
Well, I cross-trained into Rotary at Fort Walters, and en route to France, which was a bit of a surprise.
France? You got to go to France?
Well, it wasn't tough, but... that was the direction they were sending me, which didn't seem to be in the direction of Vietnam by any means. But anyway, that's where they sent me. And then I cross-trained, while there, I cross-trained over in Germany into the UH-1 helicopter, because Fort Walters was simply a primary,
right,
and transitioned into a H-23 at that time.
That's what I learned on, was the OH-23, Hiller.
Yes.
Right. Hold that thought. Colonel Long, I want to bring you on now and find out how you got into the military. So what was your process?
Well, it's similar in some ways. I had gone to college for 2 years, and again, money was a situation, and I dropped out to work. And I happened to be good friends with the president of the draft board in my hometown, and he wanted to hire me to do something, and I said, I want to go back to college. He said, well, I have to warn you, within 6 months you'll be drafted if you don't. So I enlisted in the Army.
Oh, okay.
In 1960. And then I, like Chuck, I went on to OCS and infantry school, and believe it or not, went to Fort Ord, and then from Fort Ord back to Fort Rucker for flight training. Again, in a bird dog, just like him.
Okay, and when did you do your rotary flight training?
Well, my first assignment out of flight school was to Germany, and as he and I were in Europe about the same time, I got all of my helicopter training in Munich, Germany. They set up a special school because they were training the helicopter pilots out of Germany to go to Vietnam, and there weren't a lot of them left, so they wanted to train us fixed-wing guys to fly them.
Oh, okay.
I graduated there in May of 66. Pardon me, August of 66.
August of 66. Colonel Kettles, when did you go to Vietnam, or when did you arrive in Vietnam the first time?
In February of 67.
February. And Colonel Long?
He was with
Same
us.
thing. We were in a unit at Fort Benning that formed up to go over there as a unit, and we all went at the same time.
Okay. Colonel Kettles, were you the CO of your unit? The 170 was the 176?
No, we had a Lieutenant Colonel McDaniels, who was the CO, and we had some 13 majors in the unit.
Wow.
They had all come out of the woodwork, and and I had initially the first platoon of the 176th.
All right.
However, I was the junior major out of the 13. So when Don Phillips came in, he was the ranking major, and he took over the platoon, the first platoon, and I had the option by Colonel Daniels to either stay in the platoon or else go elsewhere within the unit. I elected to stay with the first platoon, and we did very well together with Major Phillips. Then about 45 days into Vietnam, Colonel McDaniels departed on emergency leave, and Phillips, who was senior major, took over the unit. And
that's a lot of real live officers all in one place.
Well,
sounds
yes,
like.
But I was still junior major among the 13, and he offered the platoon to each of the others who were senior to me, and I guess none of them wanted it. He then offered it to me, and I signed with both hands.
Understandable. Colonel Long, what was your job? How did you fit into this scenario over there? We got about 2 minutes before we have to take a break. See how fast this goes?
Okay, well, each platoon had two sections. I was a section leader of the first section when Chuck was a platoon leader.
Okay, so what was your call sign?
Minuteman 16 Alpha.
16 Alpha. Okay.
Yeah, but within the unit, they had a nickname for people. Mine was Thin Man.
Okay, I can't tell you what mine was. At least not on the air.
Okay.
And so you're 16. Six usually means a leader of some sort, either squad
one
leader.
was first platoon, and 6 was section leader. A was the first section.
Okay, and so you were 16 of the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah, 16 Alpha.
Okay, I got it.
Best my memory can tell me. That's been a long time.
I know, I'm really testing you guys today. I apologize for that.
That is a test.
Yeah.
All right, so you've been in country now. You got into country in February, you said, of 1967. Let's set up the day, and then we'll take our break and come back and talk about what happened on May 15th of 1967. So what was your mission on that, Colonel Kettles? What was your mission on that day?
Which 15 May?
Yeah, the first when you were. It says that personnel of the 101st were getting overrun, and you guys were going out to resupply them, right?
Well, if we're speaking of 15 May of 67, they simply initiated an assault into that LZ that day, so there was no one out there initially.
Right.
And we put in about 80 troops with 8 helicopters with 2 lifts initially, about 0930 on the 15th of May. About 3 hours later, we inserted another 80 and withdrew the wounded and dead or whatever.
All right, so there was nobody. This was just an initial insertion initially.
Yeah.
To take, this is company size that you're putting in there, right?
Well, they had moved around into the ambush position from a relatively secure area. And so when they got ambushed, they were up against what was believed to be a battalion-sized North Vietnamese Army unit.
Looks like the tables were kind of turned on the ambush.
Well, the ambush is never good, but...
Oh. All right, we have to take a break here real quick, and when we come back, we're going to find out what actually happened on that day and the follow-up on that and how the colonel ended up receiving his Medal of Honor. You're listening to Veterans Radio. We'll be right back after the news. That's Kelly Trudell, a little song. You need to hear the whole thing, and we'll play it again on another program, but it talks about medevac pilots and how they used to go in and pull all these people out. And it's kind of, reason I played that is because this is kind of what happened to both of these colonels. And I want to bring Colonel Long on for just a second here. So on this first lift that went in and you had to go back, what happened to your aircraft?
Well, I was with Chuck on the first insertion where we had, I think 8 helicopters. Is that correct, Chuck?
That's correct.
There, and all the heck broke loose, and tracers and mortars and everything else. And the thing is, we were offloading 5 or 6 people, and we're onloading 2 to 3 or 4 wounded. So it was a matter of dropping off the good guys and picking the wounded up, taking them back. And I had taken mine back to offload the wounded. In the meantime, I believe Chuck had gone back in again. And on my way back, he advised me to get a hold of another helicopter to take some ammo in and some other troops. And on my second trip in, we exposed ourselves too long. The fire was heavy, and the second ship with us managed to get out. But we were left alone, so we hovered over to get wounded because they wouldn't bring them out of the trees. And by doing that, they focused all of their fire on us and just blew us up in the LZ, so we became infantrymen. That was Mr. Ron Roy, Spec Poor Hawley, and PFC Washington were the crew. By the way, One Officer Roy retired as Lieutenant Colonel also. So. Anyway, we were left there to fight until Chuck came back to get us all.
All right, so you're on the ground in this LZ, and in reading the details of the operation, we know that there were jets that came in and dropped their loads. You had gunships and everything else. And then, Colonel Kettles, how many times did you go in and out of this LZ?
A total of six times.
Wow. 6 times. And
but
you're
the
still
last
here.
time, pardon me?
And you're still here. That's what's surprising, because it sounded like it was. You mentioned how many bad guys were down there. Were they NVAs?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Well, they were serious.
Well, yeah, I understand that. So you went in there 6 times. You got Colonel Long is on the ground with his crew. So I know that would have to be a big concern to you as well. In many of these return flights that you're bringing people in, taking people out, you lost a few aircraft yourself.
Well, over the course of the entire mission that day, we went through some 19. And the one that Don Long flew on that resupply mission was destroyed entirely in the LZ. And each of the other 18, of course, were of varying degrees of damage. None, of course, were flyable, but in the 2 that I had flown, both of those got evac'd with a CH-47 down to Vung Tau and the Corpus Christi, because they were damaged beyond unit.
You broke them.
Well, yes.
They were
broken.
As
a matter of fact, the Secretary of the Army presented me with an invoice at the ceremony for the 19 helicopters. Now, it's only a cost of $89,300,000.
Okay,
but he said it's payable with credit card. However, my credit card company has a different idea. The credit limit is not going to even come close. So
I think that's too modest to tell you that both of his helicopters were just laced to pieces with 30 to 40 holes in them, in plexiglass and everything. They were really messed up.
I know. You're on the ground, Colonel Long. You're on the ground, and you're watching Colonel Kettles come in more than once with his entire team. And let's face it, Colonel Kettles wasn't the only pilot out there that day, and the only aircraft. I mean, there were other 18 crews that were going in and out of there on a fairly regular basis until they kept, I'm talking in aviation terminology here, that we broke the aircraft, and so we had to go get new ones. Yeah. And you were able to borrow a couple or some from another sister company, right?
Well, when it came to the emergency extraction for the last 44, which included the 4 of Don's crew, we, in the 176th, only had one flyable UH-1D lift-type helicopter. So we had to borrow 5 with crews from the sister company, the 161st, up the street. And I say up the street, probably 30 miles up the road. And then we simply rendezvoused in the air in close proximity to the LZ before going in. They were coming out from the north, and we were coming out from Duck Foe. And so then we, of course, went in trail formation because of the LZ configuration, and picked up what we thought were the entire 44, which included Don Long and his group. When the trail aircraft commander announced that they were all on board, we departed the LZ, climbed to about 1,200 feet, and then started a left turn about 180 degrees back toward Duck Foe. When the command and control aircraft, someone on board that, told me that there were 8 infantry troops down there who did not get on board any one of the helicopters.
Well, any particular reason? Were they pinned down or
well,
what happened?
They had been down in the riverbed below, putting up a last-ditch effort to defense against the North Vietnamese Army while the troops loaded. And they had simply not gotten up in time to get on board the helicopters. And, of course, the aircraft commander on that last one, he had no idea they were there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody sometimes can realize the confusion of what goes on the ground when you're trying to get everybody on board an aircraft and trying to make sure that you have enough power to get off, actually get off the ground sometimes up there. So you already had some troops on board yours?
I only had one on board. I had no idea what the distribution was behind me in the balance of the 5 helicopters, but I had only the one, and so I simply turned the flight over to number 2 for him to take them back to Duck Foe and the medical facilities that were co-located there.
Okay.
And I simply broke off when I got back abeam the troops. And I could see them. I was in the left seat. They were to my left. The Seacrest, who was my co-pilot, was in the right. And, of course, he couldn't see them, but I could. So I simply took the controls and broke off from the flight and went back into the LZ again.
You had no guns at this point? I mean, you had the guns on the helicopter, but you didn't have any gunship supported?
Well, the gunships and the fast movers, Air Force that is, with napalm and such, had departed along with, and the artillery had shut down because they were of the opinion
that everybody was
that
out.
the LZ was clean.
Oh.
So anyway, with only by, I guess, the element of surprise, I went back in to pick up the 8.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of breathless here as I'm listening to this story. Colonel Long, were you able to get out on that lift that went out?
I was able to get out on the first one. I got wounded in my leg and I couldn't walk, so I had 2 of the instrument got on each side of me and helped me across the LZ. I had told them too many people try to get on the closest helicopters, so we're going to the farthest helicopter. So that's what they did. I carried the radio for them, and they dragged me and got me on a helicopter. So I was part of the initial group, not the final 8.
Okay, all right. So what? Just quickly tell me what your feelings were when you took off out of that LZ.
Go to me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, relief, great relief, and lots of thanks, because as you may have surmised by now, that myself and 43 others probably wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for him.
Well, yes.
And I had 5 children, married at the time, as did he.
It continues to be an amazing story. We're talking here with America's newest Medal of Honor recipient, Colonel Charles Kettles, and also Colonel Donald Long. Both of these people were very busy on that May day of 1967, when they had gone into a landing zone initially to drop off troops for a mission, and the troops on the ground ended up being ambushed, and then they had to go back and get them, and that's where we are in our story right now. So Colonel Kettles does a reverse and goes back into this LZ, and I'm sure that even the bad guys on the ground are going, what the heck is going on here? What is this person doing? And I'm sure they unloaded on your aircraft.
Well, yes. Then, of course, they had one single target,
yes,
which was, I guess, to their advantage. And almost immediately after touchdown, a mortar round went off the nose of the helicopter, and which took out the left chin bubble where I was, and the part of each of the windshields, and the rest of the damage. I didn't shut down and do a pre-flight.
You didn't do an inspection at the time.
No, I still had a clean panel,
mm-hmm.
and the troops, of course, loaded and with great haste. And when the crew chief said they're all on board, and I had turned over the controls back over to Ray Seacrest in the right, and gave him a thumbs up and let's go. And he picked it up, and it began to fishtail back and forth for whatever reason. I don't know. Doesn't make much difference. But anyway, in the process, I learned later, one of the grunts got thrown out the left side when it fishtailed like that, and he grabbed the skid on the way out, and his buddies were able to pull him back in again. And then I took control of the helicopter, and being overweight by probably 600-700 pounds,
right?
The Dash 11 engine was not up to it, so rotor RPM dissipated slowly, and the warning horn, of course, came on. So simply lowered the collective, which offloads the blade, regained the RPM again, then traded that RPM for forward speed, because what I needed was about 35, 40 knots to get in and to get the machine into translational lift. And if it was going to go, why, it would go at that point. If not, why, we were going to be a 2.5-ton truck going down the road with a rotor head, I guess.
That's you're just riding on down the road. Forget about this getting up into the air. That's for people that are not in aviation. That's a difficult thing to do. It's kind of I'm using my hands here, and I know it's, you're playing with the controls in order to get the blade to turn fast enough so that you can get any lift at all and continue moving forward. And you got to remember, he doesn't have any chin bubble, he doesn't have any windshield. I'm sure that all the needles are going back and forth all over the place as he's trying to nurse this thing and actually pull it into the air. As we say, pull pitch, just go and hope that you can get up there. And you probably bounced a few times before you finally got off.
It took about 5 or 6 of the trading the rotor RPM for forward speed,
mm-hmm.
then trading that for rotor RPM and back and forth about 5 or 6 times down that river valley before it actually took off.
So, okay, so you're up and you're out of there.
Yes.
How did that feel? As he said, relief.
It seemed like a damn good idea to me.
So how far did you have to take these people that were on board your aircraft while everything is, wind is blowing in your hair, as they say?
Well, it was quite well air conditioned at that point with the ventilation through there. So It was more comfortable, I guess, that way.
Humble is not the word I can use right now. So you had to fly them back to, where did you take the troops back
to Duck Foe and the facilities that were there, co-located medical.
What's really amazing about this story, folks, is how many people were wounded from your unit, or the unit of all the aviation units? How many were wounded?
I think there were a total of 9. Don Long being one. Roland Scheck, who was my gunner up until the last, up until the point we did the emergency extraction. He had taken a 51 in the knee, which destroyed his leg and the upper part of the leg as well. So it was later amputated at Quignon in the day. And he also took a round in the chest protector. But he survived all that. Matter of fact, he served in the post office system his entire career. He was an interesting youngster. I say youngster, relatively speaking. He was certainly a youngster.
At the time, for sure.
Well, I learned after he had left, my official title among the enlisted was Papa, created by Roland, no less.
No.
He had
another one of these old man. Well, anybody over 22 or 23 was the old man of the unit. So I've got a feeling you were a little bit beyond that at the time.
Well, I was 37, I guess, and he was just fresh out of school, I guess.
Sure.
And he was a German national who had gone to Canada and joined the Canadian militia with the intent of going to Vietnam. Having learned that they were not going to Vietnam, he got authorization to be relieved of duty with them for the purpose of coming across the border at Detroit and join the U.S. Army. And he joined us at Fort Benning when the unit formed.
Okay.
And
so he was the worst wounded, I guess?
Yes.
Okay. And Colonel Long, what happened to you? Where did you go?
Oh, you mean after I was evacuated?
After you were extracted and evacuated, where did you end up?
Well, they took me to the 1st Brigade, 101st Medical Tent, because I had shrapnel through my leg. But and they repaired it and had a toe tag on me to send me on to Quignon. But they got the word that Quignon was getting full, the hospital, because it wasn't just 101st having problems that day. I suppose others were too. So they told me to stay in the area and get daily treatments at the medical tent. I was able to walk with a cane. So I stayed in my tent, and then when I could, I'd get a ride down to the medical tent. And that took me quite a while to recover, because mostly from infection more than anything else.
Right. So did you stayed in country? When you recovered, did you go back in the air?
I stayed in country, and then while I was grounded, believe it or not, Chuck became ops officer, and he pulled me up there to train me to be an ops officer too. And I got back on flight status, and eventually left the unit because they were getting rid of experienced people to go to other places. And I went to another unit to be the ops officer, but I did get back on flight status, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. All right. So now everything kind of speeds up. You are put in for the Distinguished Service Medal, which you received. And then what did the Army do? Because you didn't remain on flights. Well, you were still flying, but I mean, you weren't the CO anymore, or your platoon leader. Where did they send you?
Well, the following day, I had dinner with Major Phillips, who was then commanding the company, which was not unusual. We normally had, but he made a point of telling me he'd like to have dinner, and so I knew it was more serious than the usual evening meal. And shortly after we began having dinner, he said, "I'm going to move you into flight operations." And I asked why, because I was quite happy where I was with the platoon. And he said, "Well, I thought maybe you could figure out what an assault helicopter company does without any helicopters."
Since you had broken them all.
Yes. So I stayed there probably 30 days or so. And then he had another meeting with me. I was not doing very well. I was not going the direction I wanted to go, but he pointed out that I was going to be transferred up to be the brigade aviation officer, that they were losing their brigade aviation officer, and I was to be the replacement. I said, hell, I don't want to go up there. I'm as far back as I care to be. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, neither one of us have any choice. The general says you're going to be the next brigade aviation officer. So it's one step further back from where I wanted to be.
So you're moving into relatively safer and safer areas.
Well, yes, but...
and up the ladder.
And, well, yeah. I would call it being kicked upstairs, but usually they think that's a negative, but I guess it was supposed to be favorable. I didn't see it that way, but...
So when did you receive the Distinguished Service Cross?
About a year later, in May of '68, to my surprise, because the day after the event there at 15 May, Colonel Ponder, who was the battalion commander, aviation, came down to the unit, and we talked about it a bit, and he asked if I would come up to the battalion and put on paper what had really happened. And I was frankly not accustomed to having a full colonel to ask me to do anything. They usually told me what to do.
Right.
But anyway, I said, well, that's all right. I'll be happy to do that. But I really am not comfortable doing that unless you can assure me that whatever is on paper will not be used for favorable action toward me, because otherwise it's going to look self-serving. Right. Mm-hmm. And he indicated that he was agreeable to that. And so I did exactly that. So when the award came down the track, I was at Fort Sam Houston at the time. I was out at Randolph Air Force Base because we had a flight detachment in support of Fourth mm-hmm. Army headquarters with Randolph, because of course there were no facilities at Fort Sam Houston. So I was the maintenance officer for the detachment, and secretary to General Lincoln, who was the commander of then Fourth Army. She called and told me she had this award, the Distinguished Service Cross, and would I be available for presentation on that following Friday at the Quadrangle. And I said, well, why don't you just put it in distribution, because we have a courier goes back and forth.
Just send it by mail.
And there was a long pause. And she said, oh, my, General Lincoln would never be agreeable to that. I said, well, let me go check the flight schedule, because I have no idea whether I'm on or off for Friday. And they hung up the phone, and probably about a minute and a half later, the Lieutenant Colonel, detachment commander, came, I think, through the door. I don't think he even bothered opening it. He was madder than hell. And said, what the hell are you doing? I said, what are we talking about? He said, you know damn well what we're talking about. He said, you not only won't be on the flight schedule, but you will be at the Quadrangle on Friday at the designated time. So,
yes, sir.
He still won't, right? And so that's what I did.
Well, and that's almost where the story probably we thought was going to end.
Well, yeah.
And Colonel Long, I don't want to be remiss in saying that you also received a number of awards for your actions on that day as well.
Yes, I did. The other pilot and I got Silver Stars, and our crew got Distinguished Flying Crosses. And there's quite a few that went around the unit, and we don't know where they came from either, basically.
I think it certainly is, well deserved. The other thing I understand is you got yourself a combat infantry badge.
No, I'm attempting to do that. There's
okay.
I won't belabor that point right now.
We don't have time to get into that. I'm always wondering how those guys can get air medals, but we can't get it. Even when we're sitting on the ground, people shooting at us. That doesn't count. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't get cut off on that. This whole story, we're running out of time already. We're coming up to the top of the hour. is you can go to VVA310.org, which is the local Vietnam Veterans of America, and a guest that's in the studio, but he won't talk, Vance McGrum, has put this whole thing up on the website. So if you go to the website, up in the right-hand corner, it says Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kettles. Click on that, and you've got the Medal of Honor ceremony that you were able to go to at the White House. I understand that the president called you up and said, hey, could you come to my house?
And he clearly outranked me, so I just said, yes, sir.
Which sounds like it was a great ceremony. I'm sorry I didn't get to go to that. Anyway, they upgraded your Distinguished Service Cross to the Medal of Honor, which is, as I knowing you as I do, is very humbling experience. And as you pointed out, that it really isn't just you. It's also the 44 guys that came out of there and every pilot and crew member that was there with you that day. Well, and their children.
There were some 74 helicopter crew members involved in the total mission that day.
And it's so amazing that only really one person got seriously injured. That's amazing. And I know that, for anybody who's ever gone down to their local veterans, whatever it happens to be, and there's a Huey there, go up and push your finger against it. There's no armor plating in those things, folks. I mean, we sat on armored seats and we wore chicken plates, armor, vests, but that was about it. And so I want to congratulate you for all pilots and crew members that were in Vietnam from 1973, and thank you for your service, and thank you for setting a role model for all of us.
Well, thank you.
And Colonel Long, the same for you. I wish that I had known my real live officers better when I was in the service, but it just wasn't to be at the time. And I think it's a mutual admiration society that we've got going now with the people that were on the ground, to the people that were on the air, to the fast movers, to the tank drivers, to everybody else. And I got about a minute left, right? And so is there anything that you would like to end on?
Yeah, I would just like you to repeat that. Was that VVA310.org?
Yes, VV310.org. Up in the right-hand corner, click on Colonel Kettles. The whole story is, Colonel Long's story is there, Colonel Kettles' story is there, and I'm sorry we run out of time. Hopefully I can get you two men back on the program again some other day, and we can go into...
Say thanks to Chuck again one more time.
You got it, Colonel Long. Thank you very much also for being out there in North Carolina. Colonel Kettles, thank you very much. We'll be back next week. Everybody tune in Veterans Radio and fly your flag. Until then, you are dismissed.